Hi everyone. So today we're going to be taking a look at my fall favorites. These are plants that have just really been impressing me, catching my eye this fall. And a lot of you might be wondering why I never do like monthly favorite videos. Honestly, I just don't feel like I have enough plants for that to be like, I don't know, interesting for you guys or non-repetitive, if that makes sense. But I also just like seeing the differences from each season based on where plants live in my house, like how differently they react, how much more they grow, how much more they change on a seasonal basis. I just think it's more fascinating to look at. So that's why I do these seasonally. But we have, I think, a little over 10 plants on my list today that we're going to be taking a look at in no particular order. So let's just jump right into it. So the first plant I want to show you guys is actually my Anthurium silver blush, and I am just so in love with this plant, you guys. This is the first Anthurium that I ever owned. I still need to buy a cover pot for it, but it has been living in my IKEA cabinet ever since I got it. I honestly have just been a little bit, I don't know, it's happy in there. I'm leery of taking it out of there. And I did have a problem with this one. So this was a free plant from Aroid Asia in the very first shipment I ever got from them. I did rot it somehow. Not totally sure how. I think because I didn't give it a root rot treatment when it got here in that shipment, maybe that was the problem. But it basically lost all its roots. I had to restart it in water. It took quite some time. And then I had it in a tiny little 2-inch pot, and it just like outgrew that pot so quickly. I did pot it up into this, oh, I don't even remember. I'll have to flash up on screen for you how long ago it was. And it is already pushing its chunky roots all around in there. It's gonna be kind of hard to see because there is a label on this, but hopefully you can see down in there those thick roots. They are really pushing around. It has been not only growing more and more roots, but it did finally put out 2 new leaves. I still only lost 1 leaf in the process of that root rot situation though, you guys, so that was fascinating. So this leaf right here and this leaf are the 2 original leaves still left on here. When it was first getting its new roots back, right before I took it out of water and transferred it back into soil, this was the next leaf that came out. I think that's why it's a little bit deformed. It didn't get like reach like full size. But then this is the newest leaf that came out recently, and just look how beautiful that is. Oh, I just love all of the silvery variegation on this. I love how dark this leaf looks right now. It will probably lighten up a little bit over time, but it is definitely a loving life now. I'm glad that I was able to figure it out. And I've been pretty successful with the other Anthuriums that I've imported so far. I think this one I just had a slight learning curve on, but definitely a beautiful, beautiful plant. I definitely love it. It does look like it is trying, I'm not sure if y'all be able to see down in there. It looks like it's trying to push out another new leaf right there. So hopefully that one will be coming out soon and it will just keep filling in, because another thing I had always heard about Anthuriums was sometimes they can behave a lot like Alocasia, and you may find yourself like every time a new leaf comes in losing an old leaf, and then it can be hard to keep a lot of leaves going on them. But so far, so good. Absolutely love this plant. Okay, speaking of alocasias, let's look at an alocasia next. And let me stop Theo from about to try and chew on it. 1 second. Okay, well, as is usual, I cannot bring like all the plants I want to talk about out at the same time anymore because Theo just wants to mess with them. So I'm gonna have to be swapping out as we go along. But our next one I want to look at is actually my Alocasia Bambino. Now, if you guys will remember, a while back, we did do a little bit of I don't know, plastic surgery on this plant, if you will, as is known to happen sometimes with alocasia. The corm, the base of the corm, the base of the plant had stretched out considerably and was kind of flopping around. So we did repot the plant and bury the corm deeper. And I did mention in that video to you guys that sometimes the plant can throw a little bit of a fit after you do that, drop a bunch of leaves and everything, but over time it definitely will help improve the plant versus not doing that. This plant did throw a little bit of a fit, not a huge fit, and by fit, let me just use my black velvet alocasia real quick to show you, because I recently took this plant and did the same thing. This part of the corm had grown out considerably. It was like all the way up here. So I did the exact same thing that we did with the Bambino. I buried it further down. It then dropped all but one of its leaves. And of course, Theo then went and chewed on it. So now it's got lovely holes there, and it's just been sitting here like this. But let me show you what has been happening below the surface. And this is what happened on the Bambino too, but the Bambino's pot is a less clear pot than this for you to see what is going on. I should probably just include this one on the like favorites list just because I'm so impressed with what's happening below the soil line. So this plant has pushed around way more roots from where I buried that. Now you can see here, there is a corm. That corm is low enough in the soil that, and the direction it's pointed is down. That should develop into a whole new plant and shoot up and help fill this back out, just like that corm is doing right there. Do you guys see that? That is a corm way down in there that is working its way up to push a brand new leaf and the start of a brand new plant out up here. There are a bunch more corms working around in this plant. Like, hopefully I don't spill soil everywhere, and hopefully you can see up in here, but there's corms all over the place up in here. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can see 5, and 2 of them are 4 of them are actively starting to push out new leaves. So this is about to go from one little leaf on this one original corm to like 5. We got the one under there, 6, 7 shooting up out of here. So this is what happens. It's kind of like that hole. It's got to get better before it gets worse kind of a thing. This is what will happen. It will get worse, but then it will get better and it will start to look like this. So this is probably the most leaves I have had on this plant since I first bought it. There were more than this on the plant when I first bought it, but as those corms had gotten overgrown and were flopping, the leaves were starting to die off more quickly. It was harder to keep as many leaves alive at a time on this plant, but now it is definitely super happy, and just like what was happening, take him out of his cover pots. Cover pot's kind of heavy. Just like what was happening on the black velvet I just showed you, you can see down here in the bottom, we have a corm baby that has kicked off and is pushing up a new plant in between the 2 original ones there. And I know there's 2 leaves there, but they're coming from the same corm. Now, like I said, this pot is more opaque, so you can't really see well in there. Plus, I recently watered it, but the roots have just taken off, just like I was showing you in the black velvet, since we buried these deeper. And so I am super happy about this. And there is a new leaf trying to come in right there on that one. And it looks like there's the start of a new one trying to push over there. So currently we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a 6th one coming in over here. This will be the 4th leaf coming in over here. But it has been a while since I've had to remove a dying leaf off of this plant. So this is definitely what we want. We want a big, beautiful, bushy alocasia like this. So when we do get overgrown corms, and actually let me grab my Maharani because we're going to have to do this to my Maharani pretty soon too. So I want to show you, for those of you who haven't seen that video, what an overgrown corm looks like. So give me 1 second. Okay, and just a reminder, this is just natural process for alocasias. It's just what happens, and over time your original corm will die off. That's why I always say don't harvest all of the corms out of your pot if you do want it to just fill itself in normally. Now, if you do harvest all your corms and you propagate them, well, then you'll just have something to replace it with. But you know what I mean. If you want it to just all keep growing in the same pot, leave some in there. This is what I mean by an overgrown alocasia corm. So this whole section here that you might hear people refer to as the stem is just part of that corm. And this is where all like old leaves have died off. And you can see there are new corms trying to start coming off of even up here above the soil line off of this original corm. So I need to rebury this one sooner rather than later. And as you can see, I've finally gotten up to maintaining 5 to 6 leaves on this plant, which was a miracle. This has definitely been like my fussiest alocasia, you guys, this Maharani. But now that this is beginning so overgrown, I'm having a harder time keeping leaves up here, and it keeps trying to push out flowers, which is what that is coming in right there right now. And so that is kind of my sign that it is definitely time to rebury this one. And when I do, I will probably drop down to 1 leaf until it reroots, and then it will start filling in like the Bambino that we were just looking at. But fascinating, I'm telling you. Alocasias are so fascinating, and I just love that they just replace themselves and take care of themselves if they feel like they're gonna die off. But definitely been loving this one this fall, and all of these alocasias are now, I mean, not now, I mean, they've always been living in my southern facing windows, but now they're getting more light because we're getting that direct light coming in. And so this time of year, I usually see them start to fill in a little bit more anyways, but what we did to that plant really helped it take off. Okay, let me see. What do we want to look at next? Okay, I'm gonna get this one out of the way now. I say out of the way because I know not a lot of people on my channel are probably fans of succulents, but I just have been in awe of this plant. And one of the first videos I ever did on this channel was how to propagate a succulent using the beheading method. We did recently do that again to the mama plant that the plant I'm about to show you came off of. But I was just looking at this when I was watering it yesterday and I was like, oh my gosh, like it has gotten so much bigger. So I should be showing you some footage right now of what this plant looked like when we first propagated it via beheading, so you can get an idea of the size of it. And we just cut it off, stuck it into another pot, and just let it be. I did have to repot this back in the springtime because it was just getting so much bigger, and now it's just gotten even bigger. So this is my Graptivaria, and look how beautiful this plant is. I am dripping water, you guys. It's still a little bit wet from when I watered it yesterday, but look how gorgeous it is. And it's just so huge. I mean, look at the size of my hand compared to what we were just looking at. It's massive. And when I actually potted it up into this larger pot, it was barely the same circumference. And now you can see it's definitely a little bit wider, but I just love the coloring on this plant. It is so gorgeous. It has done so well for me. I will say I have not gotten new growth starting yet on the mama plant from the last time we propagated it. I don't know what is up with that. I feel like it's taking longer than normal, but maybe I'm wrong. But I can't get over this. It is just so big. It is so massive. It is so beautiful. I did already sell all the other propagations that we have done from that mama plant of this plant, except for this one, because I keep going to list it for sale and I keep looking at it and I'm like, I just can't do it. It's too beautiful, you guys. I'm gonna keep this glass thing on here so I can tilt it a little bit better without spilling water everywhere for you guys. The rosette shape, like the purplish, the greens, everything. Just so impressed with this plant. It is definitely a super easy to care for plant. I mean, it gets watered maybe once a month. I basically just wait, and I know you're not technically supposed to touch succulent leaves. It's because they have like a powdery coating, you guys, and when you touch it, the oils on your fingers rub it off and it doesn't come back. But like, this part of the way I like to know if it needs to be watered is to give the leaves a little squeeze to see if they're feeling a little bit less firm. If I know it's been almost like a month since I watered it and I know the soil is completely dry. So that's basically all I do, is I just give them a little squeeze, and if they feel like they're losing water in them, then I water it. But absolutely love this plant. I mean, it might be my favorite succulent that I've ever owned. I think I own 1, 2, 3, 4 true succulents right now. This is definitely at the top of my list as my favorite. Okay, let's see. Okay, this next plant. This is one of those plants that grows more in the winter than it does in the spring and the summer. But once again, your plants typically don't know what the season in your house is. So this plant outside in the wild would die off in the summer and come back in the winter. In my house, it just slows down its growth a little bit. Doesn't produce as many flowers in the summer, but in the fall, late fall in particular, is when it really starts to take off. And that is my beautiful cyclamen. Love this plant. I originally got this plant in October 2 years ago. Yes, I can't believe I've had it that long. 2 years ago in October, I got this plant. It's actually the only plant I've walked to a plant store to buy and walked back home with the plant. That's a story for another day. But I did repot this earlier this year in the spring. I believe that was in a members only video, from a 4-inch into a 6-inch pot, and it has just loved it. It has started taking off so much more in the last like month. All of these beautiful white flowers that just look like they're floating like little white butterflies. The lovely variegation on the leaves. Now, when I did repot this, I will say the older leaves have kind of slowly at the bottom been dying off, which is not abnormal. They also, you can see, they kind of look a little bit like curled. That's one of the reasons I kind of knew it needed to be repotted, was it was just having a hard time using its water appropriately, if that makes sense. And so the new leaves that have been coming in that you can see up here at the top are more flat like they should be. But absolutely love this plant. This is a bulb-based plant. Is it bulb? I'm gonna flash that up on screen for you. It might be a tuber. I'll flash it up there to make sure it's right, but if I had this out of its pot and I dug down in the dirt, you would be able to see it almost looks like an onion, if you will. There's just a big round structure that is holding a lot of the water and nutrients, and then the plant is actually growing all up out of the top of that. So if this plant does for some reason die back for you in the wintertime, maybe you just have it, or sorry, in the summertime, maybe you just have it in a very hot window and so it thinks, oh, it's summer or something like that, and it dies completely back. Do not throw it away. It should come back in the winter. Just make sure you're not overwatering it during that time. You can leave it where it is. It will be fine. And then it should, like I said, just start to sprout back out. Depending on where you live, early fall to early winter, it just needs the signs that it's getting cooler outside, daylight time is getting less during the day, that kind of thing. But absolutely loving this plant. Okay, who is next? I think I'm going to take a second to swap some of these out because the only other one I brought out so far I think I want to save to the end. Okay, so the next plant I want to look at, I am actually kind of shocked that I am bringing this plant up. So this is a calathea, and it is one of the calatheas that I have told you guys has probably been, she's probably been the biggest pain in my butt out of all my calathea for various reasons, but for whatever reason, in the last like few months, maybe even just in the last month, no, probably the last 2 months, she has just like turned around. She's a whole new plant. So this is Rose, which I call Rose because it is a Calathea rosapicta medallion. Look how beautiful she is looking, you guys. Those of you who have been around for a while and have watched all my Calathea catch-up videos, you know she has never looked this good. There is hardly a single bit of crispiness going on. There's a little bit on the very tips of some of the leaves, but hardly anything, and there's a ton of leaves. So my biggest problem with Rose in the past has been that we get leaves dying off, crisping up, turning yellow, dying off, and then I lose like 2 or 3, but she only puts out 1 new one for each of those. That's a lot, not for each of those. That doesn't sound right. Let me try that again. For every 2 to 3 leaves she loses, she only puts out 1 new leaf. So she always just kind of looked not fabulous, not bad, but not as good as a lot of my other Calathea. Reminder, also reclassified now as Gopurtia, but until everybody else gets on board with calling them Gopurtia, I'm going to keep calling them Calathea. But now she's actually putting out multiple leaves at a time, and I did recently remove 2 yellowing older leaves off of her, but right now she's got 1, 2, 3, 4 leaves starting to come out, and there's a new one that just unfurled right over here. You can see like hopefully you can see if the camera will focus on the plant. And the leaf I want at the end here, it's still not fully kind of uncurled. That's the newest one, but just so many leaves. I don't even know if you're gonna be able to see them because they are so, she's hard to hold today. They're kind of way up in here. I don't know if you guys can see. Like right there is a new leaf. Is it focusing? It's trying to focus on that front leaf. There it is. There's a new leaf coming in there. There's another one coming in over here. So I am just super impressed. I just poke myself in the eye with her. I don't know why all of a sudden she's just turned around. And I mean, we're into the lower humidity part of the year, which is usually when some people have issues with Calathea. I honestly, I don't notice a huge difference in most of my Calathea when the humidity drops. They may get slightly crispier on the ends, but it's not like super noticeable. I've always told you guys that. But the fact that she has hardly any crisping right now when we've headed into lower humidity time of the year is just astonishing to me. I'm just really hoping that this trend continues and she just keeps getting fuller and fuller and losing less and less leaves. So very, very impressed with Rose here. Whole new woman. Rose is a whole new woman. Okay, next plant I want to look at is actually really large and heavy. So I'm not going to be able to bring it in here. So let's head into the bedroom and check out my Tenanthe luberciana. All right, you guys, here is my big, beautiful, gorgeous Tenanthe luberciana. This plant has just been growing like crazy lately to the point that there are so many leaves on the top of each of the stems that it was getting weighed down and they were actually flopping over and looking like they were going to potentially break. So I've actually had to support up a lot of this plant. Let me get in closer so you can see what I mean. Okay, so hopefully you can see right here is a support stick, back in there is a support stick. I don't even remember how many are in here now, maybe like 4 or 5. But I'm going to take you lower to the base of the plant so you can see better what's happening and why I've had to do this. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see here. Here's the support stick. And I'm having to support these because if you can see, the base of this plant, like the base of these, I guess you could call it a stem basically, are just really thin. And then you get a node and you get a ton of leaves coming off of that node. Now, this particular one up here, let me get you up a little higher, has lost quite a few leaves, so it's not at risk of falling over because there's only a few leaves still on it, but others of them just have so many leaves. I think you can see over on this one, there's just a lot of leaves, and so it's just getting really top heavy, and it was like flopping over and almost hitting the ground. So that's why I had to add all of these support sticks in here. But let me back us back out real quick. So because I've done all that, now we are just upright and we look even more full than we did before, which is why this plant has really been catching my eye. And I have noticed, because for a while there, if you see kind of on these leaves, it looks like we were losing some of our variegation, but this is genetic variegation, so it will come back, but there are some leaves that have like a 0 on it. But lately, all these new leaves that are coming in up over here are looking super nicely variegated. And once again, you guys, this plant, honestly, I think with the exception of maybe my Raven ZZ plant, this plant probably gets less light than any other plant in my house. Like, I feel like, I guess maybe that's not accurate because my plants in my north-facing windows probably get a little bit less light. But in terms of how far away this is from a window, like if we rotate this way, east-facing window, right? That's a long distance right there from that window. And the only other light it's getting is from behind me, which I have no idea what the state of my bedroom looks like behind me, you guys. So here goes nothing. If we rotate around behind me, you can see how far away those southern-facing windows are. So coming back around, that's not a lot of light in terms of distance from the light for this plant, yet it has just grown like mad. It looks amazing. I absolutely love it. I did actually propagate recently. Why did I propagate that? Oh, I remember. One of the one of the stems, whatever you want to call it, had lost all but like 2 leaves on it. So I went ahead and trimmed that one off and propagated it. It is already growing like mad. This plant is just, I mean, it is an amazing plant. I absolutely love it. It was probably a quarter of this size when I bought it. Once again, I feel like all the plants we're looking at today I've had for almost 2 years. Yes, because I got this one in November 2 years ago. And that's just, I've only ever propagated off of it twice, just one cutting off of one stem and another cutting off of another stem. So it grew pretty quickly. So definitely a fast growing statement piece kind of plant. Okay, so next up we have one of my chain of hearts. So just a reminder, I do have a plain chain of hearts and a variegated chain of hearts. We are going to be looking today at the beautiful variegated version. And just a reminder, this is also scientifically known as the Ceropagio woodii. But I just was sitting on the couch, I guess I was lying on the couch looking at her the other day, and I was just like, she is so beautiful. She is like still just as beautiful as when I bought her. She hasn't like thinned out a lot, which sometimes can happen when you buy chain of hearts at the store. They just look super full because they've piled everything on top, you know, all the vines and everything, and then over time they start to get balder on top and everything. But she still looks absolutely gorgeous, and I have had to trim her down probably like 5 times since I have had her now. She just grows so fast. Now I will say one of the things that does drive me crazy about chain of hearts plants are the flowers. They flower, it's kind of like my Marantas. They flower nonstop. They're not like an alocasia where you want to remove the flower because it just puts it's a big flower and the plant puts so much energy into it that it sacrifices leaves. These are like tiny little flowers. You can see them down here. These tiny little flowers on these vines here. But they fall off so easily, you guys, and they end up all over the place, which is exactly what happens with my Marantas. Drives me up the wall. They fall into, I think the Maharani is down below this plant, and the Wayetii, my Hoya Wayetii, and currently also my Monstera alpo. And so every time I go to water those plants, there's like a ton of the little purple flowers from this plant just sitting on the surface of the soil, and I have to like dig them out of there. It's just really annoying. But I forgive her because she just looks so beautiful. And I know I could try to remove those flowers, you guys, but it's a lot. Like, it would take a really long time to sit there and trim all of those off. But she's definitely been behaving much better for me than my regular chain of hearts. Honestly, my regular chain of hearts is kind of ticking me off and I'm about ready to sell it. We can talk about that another day. It just, I don't know. And it's just not as beautiful. Like I'm looking at it right now. It's just kind of boring, especially when it's like got this on the other side of it. But definitely loving this. I seem to be doing well with the care. I think sometimes I might be watering it like a little bit too soon. I don't know, you guys. Sometimes I get leaves like here, like this. Focus camera, work with me today. Like this, that are yellowing, and I'm not entirely certain why it is. Now because I see that like right now, but like I'm looking at the rest of the leaves still feel firm and they don't look wrinkly, so I don't think it needs water. There's another one that's kind of shriveled up and died off. It could just be natural like leaf loss, but I don't know, it just kind of worries me sometimes. I'm like, oh, do I need to water you? Did I water you too soon? What's going on? I personally don't like to wait until the plant gets wrinkly. I know a lot of people say to do that, but I just get worried that it's going to be harder for it to come back from being like that dry. I don't know. I'm probably just watering it a little bit too soon. I am definitely an overwaterer. We do have like one vine over here I'm just seeing right now that looks like it is died off, coming somewhere out of the top, but that's not uncommon. Every now and again, a vine might completely die off. I find it happens more frequently after I trim the plant, so I will remove that after this. I don't see any others doing that though, so I don't think it's anything to be like super alarmed about, but here's some more dead leafish stuff going on back here. So I think I just need to dial my watering in a little bit, but obviously it's not causing a huge issue because she still looks like full and lush and absolutely gorgeous. I mean, look at her. So beautiful. So, so beautiful. And we're getting that direct sun now, so we're getting more purplish colors going on this plant because it's getting a little bit sun stressed, but definitely a favorite plant of mine right now. I am gonna go hang her right back up though, because this is definitely just temptation for Theo. Okay, so next up, as you can probably partially see, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get her all the way on screen for you guys, maybe if I back up into the monstera a little bit, but this is my Calathea warskowesii. I can't with this plant. I talk to you guys all the time about how much I love this plant, how impressed I am with her. Like, she just nonstop grows. She's putting out, might be tall enough for you to see, you can see just the tip of it right here, a new leaf here. She's putting out so many new leaves, and she does, like, every single time I water her, I have to cut off a leaf. Usually it's just one, sometimes it might be two, but it doesn't matter because she puts out like 5 more as soon as she loses a leaf. And she has gotten so big, you guys. I feel like every time I show her to you, she's like doubled in size. Can you even see her all the way? Are y'all? I don't even know. We may have to splice in some footage from a distance for you to get the full like scope of this big, bad, beautiful girl. And once again, hopefully you can see like no crispy leaf tips whatsoever. She is a velvety leafed Calathea. I have always been told that they are more prone to the brown crispy tips, that they're more difficult. She has just done fabulously in my home though. And right now, you guys, she's actually getting direct light. Like I just grabbed her off of my dresser in my bedroom and she was getting hit with direct light from those southern facing windows, but she's pretty far back from them. Like we're talking probably like 10 feet back. So my guess is it's just not as hot or intense enough that far back, even though she's definitely getting it on her leaves, to cause an issue. If anything, it might be just part of what's making her super happy and making her grow so big so fast. You guys, she's just so massive. She is so huge. How could this not be on my favorites list? I mean, she will probably always be on my favorites list as long as she is looking like this. I'm also not the world's best person about rotating her, but she still doesn't even look that weird on the back. I mean, she is pointing most of her leaves obviously towards the light, but it's not like she's looking bald back there or anything. She is just full, massive, massive, massive. I am interested, I'm gonna put her down, she is heavy. I am interested to see if she flowers again this January, because this past January is when she flowered for the first time, and we ended up propagating those later on because that type of flower did come out of a node. If you did not see that video and are interested to know all about that, I will link that video down in the description below for you guys. But all of those, I've sold all of those propagations off. I've heard from people that they're doing fabulously. I still have one of them left. It's doing fabulous. It is in my IKEA greenhouse cabinet just because that was where I had room to put it. But honestly, even though that one's in the cabinet that's higher humidity, it's behaving identically to this one who's in lower humidity. That's why I keep trying to tell you guys, sometimes I just think people jump to humidity being the problem on a lot of plants, especially calatheas, way too quickly. But oh my gosh, I love this girl so much. But let's move on. And I think the next plant I want to show you, I'm not sure about bringing this one out because Theo definitely likes to go for it, but let me see if I can manage it. All right, I got it. Theo looks like he's going to be good. Let's see if we can get through this without an incident. I am really sorry, you guys. We have not looked at this plant in a really long time. I'm pretty sure you have not seen this plant at all since the full houseplant tour that I did back at the beginning of January, which is a shame because my string of turtles, aka Peperomia prostrata, is one of my absolute favorite plants. I have only ever trimmed her once. She is dropping flowers everywhere. I don't know if y'all can see that, but all those little peperomia flowers like this, like, because I never move her. Rarely do I move her except to water her. She does have some vines that are dying off as well. I can see kind of like what I was showing you on the string of hearts. They're a little bit further in there, hard to see. So like I said, that kind of can just happen over time. It's not really anything to worry about unless it's like happening from the base of the plant. These are, that one on the string of hearts was going all the way up, but these are just like at the bottom, like the vine is still alive up here, but the bottom part has dried off for some reason. And a large part of that, here's some that just fell off, that you can see what I'm talking about. But this plant, it's on like a candle holder on a windowsill. So all of this down here doesn't actually get light. So I do find over time, sometimes the lower parts of the vines will dry up and die off, probably for that reason. But everything up here, you can see on the surface, is looking fine. There are some yellowy sections on here. There's a story behind that I'm going to be filming an upcoming video for you on. But also, there was a couple of times where I kind of went too long in between watering on this plant, and they will get a little yellow like that, and that won't undo itself. But you can see like all of this new growth that's coming in, if I can get this vine to stay up here, is like a nice rich green, and that will eventually cover up the yellow. I am losing some of the yellow leaves when I was moving her as well, or just like kind of popping off there. I am so sorry this camera's not wanting to focus fast today, you guys, but some of these older yellow leaves fall off too when I move her, because like I said, she just never gets moved. In the wild, like the wind and stuff would blow and those old dead leaves like this would just fall off, but she's just kind of sitting there stationary, except when I water her, and I try to be very careful when I'm moving her to water her because I can't really leave her out because Theo will try to attack her. So it's kind of like a move her, water her real quick, and then put her right back into her home. But she is just absolutely beautiful. She is one of my favorite plants. I mean, look at all these flowers. This is another plant that flowers, like peperomias in general flower a lot, but it's not really harmful to the plant. A lot of people don't like how the flowers look. Sometimes I actually think they can be really interesting on some of the peperomias, how they come in, kind of add kind of a different unique look to it. But once again, there's just a ton of them. Do you see all of them down here? Like trying to take the time to cut all of those off would just be a lot. And they're all just kind of falling off as they get spent, which once again is kind of annoying. All these plants with all these like tiny flowers that they just want to drop everywhere. It's just crazy. I did have a good leaf accidentally fall off. I'm just going to drop it back up in the top because typically they will root and then help to fill the plant in more. But absolutely love this plant. I'm sorry I have not shown her to you in a while. If anybody had been wondering how she's doing fine. You haven't like not seen her because she was doing horrible or anything. I just didn't realize that I hadn't shown her to you. So definitely glad she is part of the fall favorites list, but I'm going to go put her back in her home real quick. And then I think we only have a few more plants to look at. All right, so the next plant I want to look at is another plant that I feel like I haven't shown you in a while, but this is my Tenanthe burl marxii. Marxii? I think it's marxii. If I'm wrong, I'll flash it up on screen for you. But this plant is doing amazing, you guys. So just a little recap for anybody who's new or doesn't remember. This plant used to live on one of the shelves behind my couch here in the living room, where it was getting southern facing light, but pretty far away. Like it barely got any like direct light, but it was doing nothing. Like it was not putting out any new growth. I will have had this for 2 years in December, so 2 years next month, and it was doing absolutely nothing. And all of you were telling me that own this plant were like, mine's pumping out tons of new growth and always has. And all of my other Tenanthes do. Like you saw the Tenanthe luberciana earlier. This is Tenanthe setosa right there behind me that's pumping out a ton of new growth all the time. And so I couldn't figure out why this plant was doing nothing. And I was like, well, maybe it's too much light, but it wasn't exhibiting any signs of too much light. But when I finally got the solar screens off of the window in the upstairs living room and we were able to move plants up there, we moved this plant up there and it has taken off, you guys. I don't even know if you can really tell. You see there's a lot of leaves way down in there that are not like as tall. You can tell better on this side. I don't know. Yeah, you can see better here. All these like lower leaves back here, those are all the original leaves when it was doing nothing. And now you can see all these taller leaves that are sprouting out are like just growing like mad. There are a ton more new ones trying to come in right now. You can see like right there is one. There's just too many to count in here that are pushing out right now. So I think it has definitely been happier living in that upstairs room where it is basically getting mostly east-facing light. It is next to a southern-facing window, but that southern window still has that heavy solar screen on it, so it blocks a ton of the light, you guys, a ton of the light. But it definitely seems to be happier. It is definitely taking off. I am thinking probably sometime soon. I might wait till the spring. I don't know. I haven't slipped it out of its pot to see how the roots are looking, but I've never repotted this, and it's been in my possession for almost 2 years. So I am thinking that it might need a repot at some point soon now that it is definitely kicking off more growth, because remember it is a rhizome based plant, so it will send up entire new offshoots, which it is actually doing right here where my pinky is. That's an entire new offshoot. So as it does that, everything's going to expand out in the pot until it gets too tight. So I probably need to check it after this video and see kind of like how root bound and stuff it is looking. But it is such a beautiful plant and I am just so happy, you guys, that it is finally filling in. I love this kind of almost like, I don't know, fishbone? Maybe not exactly like a fishbone pattern, but just this beautiful patterning on the leaves. And then of course the beautiful purple undersides. Oh, I am so happy that it is finally apparently happy. But we do have one more plant to look at. Trying to decide if I'm going to bring her out, you guys. Like, I don't know if I want to risk it because she is the one plant that is so spider mite prone, but I think we've overcome it. But I'm always just hesitant that there's some lurking, and so I don't want to bring her out around other plants. So I think we're going to go look at her in person, and if you haven't figured it out yet or guessed, it is my Calathea White Fusion, or Fusion White. I've heard it called both ways, but I call her Blanche. Let's go check her out. All right, you guys, here is beautiful Blanche. And for those of you not aware, I did have to cut all but like 4 of her leaves off, like completely back to the soil back in the springtime. I want to say around like March or April-ish. And look at her now. Look how full and beautiful she is, even more so than the last time I showed her to you, because I'm pretty sure I have shown her to you since then at least once, maybe more than once, because she is definitely one of my favorite Calatheas with that purplish coloring on the back sides of the leaves that you can kind of see coming through the front there, and that beautiful green and white variegation. But you guys, she is looking fabulous. And like I said, I have not seen any signs to think that the spider mites are back. I really though need to order some more sachets of the hanging sachets of the mites for all of my plants, because what I told you guys in the beneficial bugs video was that I wanted to be giving them mites basically probably 4 times a year, or at least 2 times a year when spring comes, because that's usually when insect activity picks up, and around this time of year. But they're so expensive, you guys, and obviously I am on a tight budget since losing my day job, so I just haven't done it yet. But I'm getting more and more nervous about her specifically, that maybe they're back and I just don't know it yet, even though there's not really anything to suggest that there is. I think I've removed like 2 of the oldest leaves off of her in the last month where they just had dried up and died, and that was it. But every time anything happens to a leaf, I automatically go, oh my God, are the spider mites back? So I really want to get some beneficial bugs just like for prevention and peace of my mind, so that she can stay looking like this all year for once, because I have not had to not cut her back to the soil at least once a year since I've had her. But I mean, when she's healthy, She is just so beautiful, and the good thing is that when she's not healthy, she bounces back quicker than pretty much any of my other plants, honestly, you guys. This girl has a will to survive, and she definitely makes my bathroom look a lot prettier. So definitely one of my favorite plants of the fall, but really in general. All right, you guys, well, those are all the fall favorite plants that I had to show you. I hope you have enjoyed getting an update on some of these beautiful plants. If so, please be sure to click that like and or subscribe button down below, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next time. Aloha!